Portal is gaming's feminist masterpiece. There is more than enough evidence to support a thoroughly feminist reading of Portal. We already know that it features a cast of no-nonsense kick-butt women. Even the adorable little turrets will kill you with kindness.
I don't hate you.
Meanwhile, the men of Portal don't fare nearly as well. Wheatley has been compared to the archetypal Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, jealous boyfriend type. Cave Johnson is the father of all evils, and there's even a guy named Ratman. Ratman. Also, it was made by a feminist. Kim Swift has been more than outspoken about the need to get more young women involved in game making. So I think it's safe to say that Portal is feminist, and I'd even go so far as to call it a feminist masterpiece in its own right. I'll admit that's a pretty high bar, even for an awesome game like Portal. Masterpiece implies it sits alongside monumental feminist works like Vaster, Pussycat, Kill Kill, and The Handmaid's Tale. But just take a look at two of the main characters. The important thing about Shell is that she's the first-person silent protagonist. According to Portal's writer, Eric Walpole, she was created as a player surrogate, a complete blank slate you impose your own viewpoint on. This already sounds a bit subversive, since Portal was a pack-in with the Orange Box, where all the other first-person silent protagonists, if you're sensing a theme here, were male. It's sneaky, to say the least. Naturally, most people automatically assume that they would be playing as a dude, and this sets up this beautiful moment when you're given the portal gun, blast a few holes in the wall, and see your character for the first time. Surprise, you're a woman. As Jen Frank wrote in Kill Screen, Shell is a feminist character because she's confronting an experience or presumption you bring into the game. She's opposing whatever you thought you would be. So Shell is a potent, powerful illustration of how certain types of games are incredibly male-centric, as I've discussed many times before. The other half of the equation, though, is GLaDOS, Shell's femme-robot tormentor. GLaDOS is the character Virginia Woolf would have created if A Room of One's Own was a science fiction novel instead of a critique of literature's boys club. That is to say, she's the victim of institutional sexism. Writing for Pop Matters, G. Christopher Williams argues that the way engineers sought to control GLaDOS is a familiar response from men to what they perceive as the misbehavior or irrational thinking of women, which is a theme that might sound familiar if you've read The Yellow Wallpaper. There's even speculation that GLaDOS's robotic armature was built to resemble a woman in bondage. So in that light, you kinda understand why she, tried to kill everybody. Her backstory is a bona fide revenge narrative, and although those can be good or bad in terms of feminism, at least we're having the discussion. Portal explores even the most unprecedented female narratives in games. Because, unlike the many other works where the concerns of men are front and center, Portal is a story about the relationship between two women, the ones we just got finished talking about, Shell and GLaDOS. This is no ordinary renegade AI and human pawn connect up on LinkedIn either. Many people think it's highly plausible that GLaDOS is Shell's mother, or technically Caroline is.
She's the backbone of this facility. Pretty as a postcard, too. Sorry, fellas. She's married. To science.
Some might blow this off as just a fan theory, but publishers like Valve love sneaking mind-blowing clues that reward players who are really paying attention. The first is how the two have so much in common. GLaDOS even mentions how alike Shell and Caroline actually are. For one, they both have a defiant streak in them. Shell is tenacious with the portal gun, using it to break free from her lab rat experiment, and Caroline, well, she just became the misbehaving robot we just mentioned. Also, they are both ambitious women in a science lab that has more than a hint of Sterling Cooper advertising agency decorum to it. Caroline wound up taking over the business, literally. Meanwhile, child Shell's steroid potatoes crushed all the other kids' science projects, which by the way, establishes that she's the child of an aperture scientist. And have you ever really noticed the way that GLaDOS treats Shell? She's your classic nagging mother.
I guess you are listening to me. But for the record, you don't have to go that slowly.
Michael Vincent Bramley blogs that without ever seeming to outright mention Shell's femininity, she carves away at it with that Lucille Bluth-like precision, often tapping into stereotypically feminine areas of anxiety. GLaDOS makes passive-aggressive remarks about Shell's weight, her intelligence, and she's constantly being teased about being adopted, which again makes you go, huh. Some people think Caroline gave birth to her, but in order to pursue her career in science, gave her up to someone else in the company. That would explain why GLaDOS picked Bring Your Daughter to Work Day to lay siege to the laboratory. She wanted her baby back, but in the end, the blood ties they don't actually matter, because we know that Shell has grown from a child to a woman under GLaDOS' watch, which makes her at least a surrogate mother. And the reason this fan theory is so important is because the theme of a daughter atoning for her mother's transgressions is rarely explored in pop culture, although you do see it all the time among the fellas in everything from Star Wars to Absalom. By our count, while 8 of the top 50 highest rated games on Metacritic this year feature father-son relationships like GTA, Devil May Cry, Metal Gear, just one, Her Story, had a prominent mother-daughter component. But Portal shows just how great the stories of women can be when GLaDOS and Shell go from bickering to saying their fond farewells. After GLaDOS has decided to let Shell leave, the turrets begin crooning. When the lyrics are translated from Italian, you see it's a tender message saying goodbye. It brings a tear to my eye. Thank God I have this companion cube to hug. So what do you think? Is Portal gaming's feminist masterpiece, or is there some other work that I'm missing? Hash it out in the comments, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe. I'll see you next week.
Hey everybody, last week we talked about life bars and their incredible importance to what we understand about games. Let's see what you had to say. Many of you, including Jeff Albertson, gave props to Dead Space for its incredibly smart user interface that did things like hide your life bar down the spine of your character's spacesuit. An ingenious development from Dino Ignacio, the game's UI developer, UI designer. So Jeff argued that this helped lead to Dead Space's strong sense of immersion, and I've actually talked about Dead Space specifically in terms of its sound design, so it's not surprising to me that it found a creative way to instill life bars in the game as well. So I completely agree with you, Jeff. If you go way back to our episode on next-gen graphics, you'll remember that consistency is the single most important factor in terms of creating a real sense of place. Consistency means many, many things, but in the case of the life bar, it means that the presentation is unbroken. Another way of saying that is that the information that's delivered coheres within the game space, and that's why UI is so important for games. Anyway, thanks for the comment. Completely agree with you. Emily Radcliffe makes an interesting observation that whether or not you think life bars belong on the screen depends on how you relate to your avatar. So in one case, if you think there's no boundary between you and your character, a conversation that Mike Ronetta over at Idea Channel addressed many, many months ago. I think it was almost a year, almost 2 years ago. But if you think of yourself as totally inhabiting yourself as a body inside of the game, then all of the information about your health should be diegetic. Again, this word I keep returning to, because it's weird to be walking around with this huge number or life bar floating above your character in the air. But if you see a degree of separation between you and your avatar, where you are not your character, but only monitoring or influencing it from a distance, again, Mike's analogy is our relation to avatars could be like our relationship to mouse cursors, for example, then it makes sense to have life bars, because theoretically, you could be omniscient and be able to know things that your character doesn't. Anyway, great comment.